Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Reinvent Legal Business Series number 2. In this series, as folks that have joined others will know, we're exploring from a global perspective new themes that have emerged and those that have changed or expanded in our new legal ecosystem. We're offering these sessions to you as live webinars, coming to you today, obviously, in that way, but we're also making them available as part of our Legalpreneurs Sandbox podcast series. So whichever you would like to do, watch and listen or listen, both of those opportunities will obviously eventually be available to you. Today, we're discussing the changing face of legal innovation and transformation. Who's zooming who? We're going to be exploring a bunch of stuff, but some of the things that we will be covering are things like what innovation and transformation people do, and all of these wonderful people are going to tell you about that in just 1 second. How to innovate no matter what your legal organisations look like. The differences and similarities between internal and external innovation, data and innovation, obviously something of increasing complexity, but also increasing importance. And of course, the impact of COVID-19 now and moving forward in this space, in the innovation and transformation space, and of course, lots more. So I'll be asking these questions of the folks here. We'll be getting you to also ask your questions and make sure that we answer those. The folks that you see here today are really an outstanding panel of thought leaders and doers in this space from Australia and New Zealand. So I'm absolutely certain that you're going to enjoy hearing from them. Our panelists, as you see them here, are going to introduce themselves and their work in more detail. So it just leaves me right now to say a huge welcome to Adrian, Carolyn, Caryn, and Katrina. Hello.
Hi all.
They're all there. You can see them. As I said at the outset, I wanted to kick this off by providing a little bit of context for you in terms of learning a little bit more about the folks that you see here and what they do. So, Carolyn, I wanted to launch us into this session with you first and get you to share, your title, where you're located, what you do, in your case, your law firm, and the work that you do with them, please. And again, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Terri. And hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. So I'm Caroline. I'm the Business Transformation and Innovation Director at Simpson Grierson. I'm based in Auckland, and we're one of New Zealand's largest full-service corporate law firms in the country. My role is largely based around helping us meet the evolving needs of this rapidly changing world that we're in. And there's kind of 2 key parts that I kind of split my time between. So the first one is an internal focus, so looking at how we can be constantly adapting our mindsets and our processes. And we do that we've got an innovation capability program. We do also have quite a big focus on emerging tech and data. So that's a part of it, and we also do a work stream around the power of visuals as well. So those are kind of the examples of bringing to life an adaptive mindset and different ways of doing things. The other really big area for me is around our clients. Their needs are constantly changing as well. So just always being connected with them, understanding what they need, whether that's smarter reporting or they've got a whole lot of hearings coming up with thousands of documents. How can we help with that? So things like that, we just want to make sure that we're at front and center of the changes for them. So those are my title and my 2 key areas of focus at the moment.
Fantastic, and thank you very much for that. So let's move across the water, as it were, Caryn, and jump in and ask you the same question.
Sure, thank you, Terri, and hi everyone today. So I'm Caryn Sandler, and I lead the legal service innovation team at Gilbert & Tobin. So Gilbert & Tobin is an Australian law firm with offices in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. And we really focus on high-end regulatory disputes and transactions. So my team comprises a variety of teams. It's knowledge and practice innovation, legal transformation, legal informatics, which is really around data, technology, AI, as well as legal project management. And we look at ways in which we can enhance the delivery of legal services to our clients and make, obviously, our legal services delivery as efficient and effective as possible. And whether that be through changing process or leveraging technology, training and the like, we look at the whole sort of spectrum. And then also I'm responsible for a client consulting capability, which is called GNT Innovate, which we launched back in 2018. And really we look at ways in which we can help our clients or in-house legal teams transform their own internal operations as well. So very much an internal as well as an external focus as well.
Thank you very much. And I guess really focusing on that external provision of services, but bringing it internal. Katrina, tell us about what you do.
Thanks, Terry. Hello, everybody. My name's Katrina Gowans. I'm the National Legal Operations Lead at Origin Energy. Origin Energy is an integrated energy provider, predominantly in the Australian market. Personally, I'm based in Melbourne, but the legal team at Origin is about 25 lawyers split over 3 centres. My role at Origin is very much focused around supporting the legal team and more recently the company secretarial team manage change. And so that change can be changes in technology, changes to the way that we work, changes in innovation and changes in the way that we come together and collaborate. So I've been in this role now for about 2 years and the biggest project that I've been involved in to date in my role is leading the implementation of a matter management and document management system for the team to really bring us into a space where we have lifetime data on our matters, we share documents in one sort of central collaborative space, and we're able to sort of work with very up-to-date real-time data. So it's really helped change the way that our legal team functions. And now my challenge for this financial year is really around some of the legal team strategic pillars, which include trying to develop more self-service tools for our business and add value to the legal services that we bring to Origin.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
thank you for that. And coming full circle, Adrian, really for you in your role, almost in some respects combining all of these things. So tell us about what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Terry, and hi, everybody. So I'm Adrian Warren. I work across 2 organisations, actually. So I work with KPMG Law, which is the legal service delivery part of KPMG, one of the big 4 professional services firms, and a legal tech business, which I still want to refer to as a startup, but I feel like we're past that now, called Plexus. My role is really to similar to others, I have 2 facets. One is internally focused. So how can KPMG Law deliver legal services better, faster, more efficiently? And we have a few pillars to how we think about that. The first being the concept of productized legal services. So delivering legal services differently through technology with different pricing mechanics and different ways of working. Managed legal services, which is really the wholesale outsourcing large chunks of a large business's legal work to a business that can accommodate with economy of scale. Pure technology. So we work a lot with in-house teams to either develop bespoke technology or recommend off-the-shelf technology solutions. And with an external focus, we have a pillar of our business called Legal Operations Transformation Solutions, which is really taking the capability that KPMG is known for globally of business process engineering and improvement, and applying that to the legal function within an organization.
Thanks for that, Adrian. And just an amazing number of responsibilities in your role. And I think it's kind of worth underscoring how all of you definitely have some similarities, but also some differences. And I guess that's what we're seeing in your roles, that they're evolving according to the organization's needs and clients' needs and expectations. But it also kind of leads me to the next point, and it may seem a strange one to jump in and to focus on, but that's really the definition of innovation and transformation. And the reason I particularly want to focus it on is because there's a lot of stuff out there seeking to explain it, and it can become a little bit overwhelming, but because it can mean different things to different people. And so really wanted to explore that with each of you. I'm hoping that in defining that and how we're using it in our industry right now, we are, kind of moving through the window dressing of using innovation as a word, and that it's starting to translate into something that signifies a process and something that signifies a culture. But I guess we're going to learn about that in just a second from all of you. So I wanted to start with you first, Caryn, with that really fundamental question of how do you folks define innovation and transformation at Gilbert and Tobin?
Yeah, absolutely, Terri. So it certainly has been a journey for us to get to where we have sort of landed in terms of how we define it. And it is also ever changing. But I would say, there certainly is a very definite feel in the market that often technology is innovation. And certainly we steer ourselves completely away from that. And really the way in which we look at innovation is something that adds value or creates value for the end user. And whether that is our lawyers, whether that is our clients, it's really rethinking the process. But when you do rethink a process, you need to do it with some form of benefit. And whether that is, efficient delivery of legal services, doing something quicker, faster, cheaper, or whether it is a complete change in mindset. So we really do think about it where it adds value. I would also add to that, for us, very important and underscoring all of that is a continuous improvement mindset. And we work very hard internally within the firm to actually deliver on that mindset, which we think underlies everything around innovation. But I think something certainly very important to us is also understanding there are different types of innovation. And what I mean by that is there is incremental innovation, and it's the small little bits that you do to deliver on an outcome. And there is disruptive innovation, which is very large, very disruptive, really changing things around. And both of them, certainly from our perspective, have merit. So I think it's very important, certainly from our perspective, to recognise that we might do some little things that is still innovation, and some really big transformative things that equally are innovation because it all adds and creates value.
Absolutely. And, Caryn, the big thing that I'm taking from what you're saying there is that innovation equals action. Innovation isn't passive in your firm. And Carolyn, I'm pretty certain that the same will be true for you. But how do you folks define innovation and transformation?
Yeah, I mean, so much of what Caryn says is so applicable to us as well. And we actually use the definition that innovation is any change that adds value. We didn't make that up ourselves, and we did work with Inventium. But I really remember a couple of years ago at a partners conference where I was kind of pitching our innovation capability program, and I felt like it was the first time that a definition actually landed with everyone, because everyone was stuck in that this is big technology. So it did really feel like a light bulb moment. So I really like that one, change that adds value, and it does mean that it can be something small and something very large and disruptive. Just to reiterate the point though, it will depend on your organisation. So a key part of my role is helping the firm deliver its strategy. So I'm not going to just do innovation for the sake of innovation. I map my program to the firm's larger strategy. So I think that is something that all organisations have to do. You have to start with what is strategically important to you, and then focus on that, rather than, because if you go scattergun, your organisation will be filled with ideas, but you're not going to be able to deliver on all of them. So starting with what is strategically important for you and your clients is absolutely critical, and something that I've certainly learned kind of my last 10 years in a more innovation role, that you've got to start with that strategic importance. You get far more buy-in and lots more momentum.
And I guess that, of the many things that you've said there, one of the big ones is that the definition has to be inclusive. It has to encourage participation from everyone because great ideas come from everywhere, right? And so Katrina, is it different? Is it different how you folks define innovation and transformation at Origin?
No, I would have given exactly the same definition for innovation in terms of adding value. And I think in a real sense, what it means in a company is it's not just saving dollars, though it can be saving time. It could be keeping intellectual capital in the company or with the team. And it can also be about managing risk. So there's some of the real examples where we see innovative tools and innovative solutions adding value for a company. I think the other sort of observation that I'd make about innovation and transformation and the way that it resonates with our team is that it is quite a cultural change as well. So, and that I think cuts across Caroline's point and the point you were drawing out, Terri, about getting everybody involved. It's actually about making it real for the lawyers in our case that are, doing the day-to-day work. What does it mean when they sit down at their desk and log into their computers? Like, how does it look different? How does it feel different? How does it change their mindsets about the way that they think about a legal problem or in a legal solution? So I think there's really that cultural aspect to it, which is very fundamental for us when we talk about innovation and transformation.
Yeah, that ability, I guess, in what you're doing in terms of making it everyone's responsibility, I guess ultimately accountability in many respects as well, but also seeking out and having the opportunity to bounce those ideas from within your organisation or even outside is just a critical part of that as well. So taking that away, again, of the many great things that you said there, Katrina. Adrian, how about for you folks, and wearing both or one of your hats, whatever you would like, in terms of defining that for you too?
Yeah, I think I echo the thoughts of everyone there. I think innovation really is just doing things differently in order to do things better. I think also echo the points of others where I think there's an over people tie the concepts of innovation with technology too closely together, and I'd echo the thoughts that it's very often not technology that's going to solve your problems. And in fact, technology is often the sort of last step of a transformation or innovation journey. I also strongly echo Carolyn's point there, where particularly the way we think about things is that any innovation really needs to be client outcome driven. And in fact, most of what we look at in terms of innovating with how we work as a firm and how we deliver services as a firm starts with what are the frustrations from our clients, what are the problems that our clients want to solve, and how can we arrive at that outcome better. I think there's a lot of opportunity to take an inward lens and look at what are our frustrations as lawyers every day doing our work, and how can we fix those. But where the real change comes, where the real value comes, I think, is having that client lens.
We've spoken about a lot of really key things there, from linking it to strategy, linking it to client needs, I guess working out in a way what your purpose is for innovation as well kind of comes through those definitions. And Caryn, I wanted to throw this question to you about process. All of those things in turn kind of come together within a process. And for folks on today that might be starting their innovation journey, is it mappable, and why is it important to think about it as a process?
Yeah, look, I think it's incredibly important as a process. I also think it also, if you're starting out, Terri, what the firm might tolerate initially might be very different to what it might tolerate in 5 years' time. And I think one needs to be very cognizant of that. I think to really execute on an innovation strategy, which is ultimately what you're trying to deliver on, you really need to think about all the underlying sort of factors and features that contribute to that. So if I reflect on our journey, when we started back already in 2015, it might have been some mappings that we did of, key matter types within the firm. but we might have identified particular key pain points, both for our lawyers and our clients, that we sought to resolve. I would consider that, as I mentioned before, really incremental innovation, you know, identifying those quick wins and ultimately executing on those. But if I reflect on where we are sort of, 5-6 years on, last year we implemented an entire new sort of part to my team, which is really completely rethinking and redefining the way in which we do litigation and competition document review. And if I would have put that in place 5 years ago, I don't believe the firm would have been ready for that. So what we've been trying to do is really think about what the firm is ready for at the same time. And I think this has been really true to the process, is our holistic strategy. So when I refer to that, I'm talking about a real focus on people, process and technology. That means that we were able to work on that sort of continuous improvement mindset, really embedding our definition of innovation to ultimately get to the point where we can actually now execute on things which are far larger and far more disruptive in nature, but are easily tolerated by the lawyers and the firm more generally, because we've really evolved in that space. So I think certainly it has been a journey. I also reflect on the fact that now, we have a very clear continuous improvement sort of framework that we work towards within the firm. And, we only introduced that to the lawyers and the firm over the last 2 years, even though my team has been using that for a period of about 4 years or so. But again, it's about when people are ready for that, and really as they move along that journey and get that sort of continuous improvement mindset around innovation, you certainly are able to deliver on that much more easily and sort of introduce new concepts to the organisation. Certainly from my perspective, very much a journey, very much a process.
And I guess the thing to underscore there too, Caryn, and tell me if I've got this right, is that there's a lot of value in that process, maybe more value in some respects in that process than even the outcomes.
Absolutely. And I see that really underpinning that is the mindset, Terry.
Yeah.
When I reflect upon the organisation, we are in a very different space. I was quite unusual in that I was promoted to partnership from an innovation role again, and that really demonstrates, partly a forward-thinking sort of firm and partnership, but also that move towards that innovation culture and mindset within the organisation, which is so important to underpin, because you can deliver on any outcomes. Really, you can leverage technology, you can make a process change, unless you have the buy-in from the people that are actually going to be using that on a day-to-day basis, you will not deliver on your ultimate innovation strategy. So absolutely important. And it's something you build over time. It's not something that happens overnight. So, for people on this call today and listening to this, I think it's really important to start with some of those quick wins, but to recognize this takes time, energy, focus as well.
And when we're talking about things like culture, and just to underscore a point that all of you made there, I think, if you're talking about culture, you're not talking about technology necessarily. So it is, when you're talking about those sort of things, it just kind of does put a really big red line under the fact that innovation does not equal technology. And that, let me ask this question of all of you, can you innovate without technology? Yes, no, yes, seeing lots of nods of heads. Okay. Well, let me pull out one of the things that we've touched on a few times there, Carolyn, and I want to come to you on this if I may. And that is this issue around prioritizing, or where do you start focusing your energy? And particularly to ask you this role, all of you in your organisations are obviously leading the charge on innovation and transformation. Is it possible to innovate and transform without someone leading the charge? So tell us what your thoughts are there, Carolyn.
From my perspective, I think there's two levels of it. I think anyone 100% on their day-to-day work can challenge the status quo and innovate by changing something and making it better. I do think, though, if you then look at an enterprise or an organizational level, you do need a dedicated leader who is really pushing and sponsoring this. And in preparing for this, I did actually look up something that I'd read a few years ago from a lady called Eva Applebaum, who used to be the head of digital transformation at BBC, and she wrote a post about kind of how kind of taxing leading transformation can be. And she talked about it being hard, it can be invigorating, but it's kind of exhausting. And from an organizational perspective, if you're operating in a constant flux, it's even harder. And for me, that just cemented the reason why you need someone at the top who's kind of flying the flag, pushing, keeping the momentum going. Because if you're someone who's just trying to do this on the side of your normal day job, it's just really too hard.
Yeah.
So for me, at two levels, yes, day to day, people can be leading the change in their particular area, but at an organizational level, you 100% need a leader and someone setting the direction, supporting and keeping the momentum going.
But those words, Carolyn, are really important, aren't they? Because sometimes in organisations, when you appoint somebody, one of you, with the titles that you have, some folks then say or might think, okay, we've done innovation now. We've appointed this person. It's their sole responsibility to make sure all of this happens, which is obviously contrary to what we're just saying. So it is important to kind of underscore you're talking about supporting, pushing, helping, but not basically being the sole person responsible for innovation.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It can't be just one spokesperson. It does have to be that building, that culture, that it's everyone's responsibility, but it definitely needs to be led from the top.
Yeah, absolutely. All of you come from large organisations, and so I guess if I'm sitting watching this today and I'm a sole practitioner or I'm in a small law firm, I might be kind of saying, well, how am I going to lead and make this innovation happen? It's not an easy question, so I've saved it for you, Adrian, to kind of tell us, what do you do? Is it really fundamentally different? How do you carve out the space if you're a solo or maybe just a few people in a law firm?
Yeah, well, I think Carolyn made a good point there where anyone really can lead change and lead innovation. And often I think for a small firm, for a solo practitioner, or for a very small in-house function, innovation and change can actually be easier. There again is a perception, I think, that innovation transformation requires a massive investment, requires huge resources for change management, requires access to big, expensive technologies. But it's not actually the case. I mean, innovation is really as simple as just changing something that you do so that it's better. I reflect back on a few roles ago. I had the privilege of working with one of the really big private practice partnerships. We were the first at the time to launch a alternative legal services business in Australia. So it's with Courts Chambers Westgarth with Orbit, and a fantastic initiative for the firm to drive. And to Carolyn's point, would not have happened if we did not have a CEO at the time that was really pushing the agenda for innovation. But still, 125 partners to convince every step of the way that a change was needed and was going to benefit the firm. For a small practice, really identifying the opportunities and then implementing them can be a lot easier. And really, I'd echo the point earlier that taking a client mindset. So we do a lot of work with in-house teams. Some of the most successful projects we've ever done have been literally single in-house counsel. And they have always been successful because they have identified a clear problem in their organization and worked with that part of the organization to help them solve it. So something as simple as, a contract approval or execution workflow, or helping to get from, wanting to sell something to a client to actually getting a contract out and signing. But those organizations, we did a project recently with a small solo in-house counsel up here in Brisbane, and I'm used to working with, enormous organizations and sitting there talking about things for a year and a half sometimes before things go out the door. And she identified a problem. We worked together to say, what is the impact of this problem on the organization? What is the impact if we actually make this change? How are we going to measure it? She took that to the CFO and said, hey, you know this problem? And he was like, I sure know the problem. And literally within 2 months, we had something. It is just, it can be difficult. To make the time, if that makes sense, to carve out when you're really busy, when you're a solo practitioner, when you're a solo in-house counsel. There's just so much happening. How do you get the time to actually think about these things? But once you've identified that problem, I think it can be a lot easier to implement.
I guess underscoring a couple of things that you're saying there, Adrian, is that the smaller you are, the greater the opportunity of agility. It's not to say that large organisations can't be agile either, by the way, but you'd certainly have the opportunity of agility. And I guess that, I think all of you have said, and I'm sure you will say many more times before we end today, that change in our legal ecosystem now is not negotiable. So it's got to be on the priority list, and I'm going to say at the top of the priority list, not just for where we find ourselves now, but certainly going forward. So it's kind of one of those things that we have to learn to do, I guess, no matter what the size of the organisation. But Katrina, I wanted to come to you because we've said a few times, and I do want to spend just a moment or two on this again, this issue of competing priorities. And Adrian just kind of mentioned it again. And we've talked about, all of you at the moment to this point, things like client pain points, problems, things that are impacting teams. How do you kind of work out the priority? How do you identify it and dissect it and take action on it? I guess where's the really critical starting point on all of this journey?
Yeah, I guess sort of right at the coalface. I'm always very cognizant of the ask of my lawyers whenever we're thinking about innovation or transformation, and what is, I call it the hump that we need to get over in particular to sort of go through a change. And they're really, I always spend a lot of time thinking about, what is the real benefit for the lawyers. At the same time, we also just can't do change because we think it's going to be great in and of, for ourselves. And the example that is often cited is, we've got a suite of precedents, and we would love it if they were perfect and had all of the, beautiful clauses in it, but then nobody in the business uses them. So what is the value of spending time making all of our precedents perfect? So there is a real balance that goes on between talking to our business about what is going to help them do their day jobs, what's going to deliver the most value from the legal team, and where the lawyers as well are going to see benefit in their sort of day jobs, be it because they're able to add value, because they're able to sort of remove some of the more routine tasks and sort of bed them down in a process. So I'm always guided by those prioritizations that are firstly set by the business. So luckily, I work for a corporate that's quite well developed in terms of setting out the strategy and being clear about their strategies for the year. And then also within our legal team, we have strategies that we align with the company strategies. And I'm very much guided by the direction that I take from our general counsel and our senior leaders about what they want to achieve for the year. And so for this year, for example, some of the strategies are to continue to sort of stay on top of our external costs. So part of the, innovation is to keep thinking about ways that we sort of track and map our external spend. We're also thinking about alternative fee arrangements and how we talk to ourselves and capture the learnings and knowledge and capture the opportunities with having alternative fee arrangements. And then finally, and probably most on point, is we've got some initiatives around how we develop self-service tools for ourselves and for the business. And so that's definitely where my focus is going to be for the team, because we have decided that as lawyers, but also for our clients in the business, that's where we see the value for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Caryn, if we think about setting priorities for clients, so staying just how we kind of focus on clients, for example, in terms of choosing our projects in a way, could we plot it on a grid where the axes might be something like complexity and needs, and kind of try to choose our projects? Is it plottable on a grid? Is it griddable in terms of being able to work out what we do?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult one, and I think it would be unfair for me to state that this isn't a challenge. This is always a challenge, and made even harder when one considers the resourcing constraints, because it doesn't matter what size organisation you are. I mean, when I reflect on my team has pretty much quadrupled in size. You know, it's a team of 60 plus. And I still have resourcing constraints. So, and I'm cognizant of the fact that, many won't have a team of that size. So I think it is really important to think about the pain points. I mean, I think, Terri, we'll talk about later around data as well, because I think data comes into this answer most definitely. But it is plausible. I think what one needs to then think about is when you do plot that, and when I reflect on some of the work that we do with in-house clients, that's exactly what we do. We look at the work, we look at where the pain points are, we look at where the priorities, we then factor in the resourcing considerations as well, various constraints around time and the like, and we try and identify what should be prioritised and what might have the most amount of impact. And I think that second piece is really important. You really need to look at what will have the most amount of impact. And maybe, it might be that there are two particular projects that you can see there as having a significant amount of impact, but based on resourcing considerations, you might only be able to take one of those through, and one which has a smaller impact, but I think is possibly as important, because again, what we're trying to, and certainly something that is front of mind for me always, is you're trying to instill that innovation culture. And that's not to be underestimated. So you can do that by doing very large projects, and you can also do that through doing smaller projects as well. And then, as you move along that innovation, also that journey, you're both embedding that innovation culture, which adds a huge amount of value to an organisation. Plus, you're also delivering on projects which are really important. So again, there is always this challenge, and there is always going to be a challenge and wrestle against, what's internally focused, what's externally focused as well. And it's something that one just needs to work through and really think about a roadmap. And certainly we really do think about that roadmap. It's what is achievable in the short, medium and long term, and but set some very clear deadlines and deliverables around that, so then you can move on to those next projects. But I would say that roadmap is important, Terri, because I think it is quite important to understand what is on the what is on the horizon, so that you can plan effectively, but at the same time being able to pivot. And I think that is incredibly important when you do set your priorities. If you would have said to me 2 years ago or 3 years ago that we would initiate a consulting capability, I would have said to you, that's ridiculous. At that point in time, our focus was very much on our internal side of things, as well as how we deliver client services from a legal point of view. We didn't necessarily have that initial ambition to go into the client consulting side of things, but absolutely that has been a really big thing for us and a really great thing for us. But we had that ability to pivot as we move forward. So having that agility, really having that flexibility in one's approach is very important as well.
Absolutely. And you also allowed me to segue immediately into the next question. So thank you for that, which is picking up on this focus of, innovation and transformation, having an internal face and an external face. Because sometimes I think that we don't take the time to pull those out together, yet one is incredibly impactful on the other, and one can lead to things to the other. So I just wanted to, kind of pull that apart a little bit. And I want to throw this question initially to you, Adrian, about internal innovation. What's the, and I guess it's picking up some of the threads we've heard here already, but what's really the driver or the purpose or the payoff or the metrics for that drive towards internal innovation or transformation?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Well, I think firstly, I'd say setting metrics and having actual measurable outcomes is incredibly important. I don't think anyone should embark on any change at all unless they've got a way of actually talking about what the impact of it will be and measuring that impact. We think about things at KPMG. I think it's quite simple to think about the impact of internal innovation, particularly in a professional services firm. Everything we do is measured. Every minute of the day we work is tracked, and everything equates directly to revenue. So I think there's a luxury in private practice and in professional services where it's actually quite easy to relate internal innovation, internal change and transformation directly to measurable outcomes. If we can save money delivering a client service and still charge the same amount, great margin. Right? If we can get more out of our lawyers at the same capacity, great, more margin. If we can attract more clients by having a better service, great. I think it's quite simple. Where it actually gets more challenging, I think, is where we're talking to clients and helping them to measure the value of their internal innovation and change, particularly within an in-house function. Demonstrating the value of change and innovation can be quite difficult because most functions simply do not have those metrics. They don't track their time. They don't tie revenue directly to the work that they do. And often we see legal functions talk about the value of what they want to achieve from change purely in the terms of, right now, this takes us too long. It's too frustrating. It takes up too much of our resources. It is worth us making this change, to make our lives better, effectively, and us up to do this other work, which is certainly a valuable endeavor, but really, really difficult to get the business to buy into. Really, really difficult to sell to anybody to say it's worth doing, particularly at the moment. Right? At the moment, every organization is undergoing enormous change across the board. And for a legal team who is typically, less than 0.5% of an organization's headcount to, go to CDO, CFO, whoever, to say, hey, I think we should have a change project right now that's only going to impact us, is really difficult. So we work a lot to help in-house teams put change in the framework of what is the impact on the business. And that's really critical. It's easier to do in private practice, but it is entirely possible to do in-house as well.
Let me pick up that thread, if I may, with you, Caryn and Caroline, because you've both spoken about the fact that you have this internal facing focus, but you've also got an external facing focus, and that maybe on a continuum, what you've done internally has led to the opportunity to productize legal services, legal tech development, maybe even, new revenue streams or new consulting services. The question that I want to ask you is this, in terms of external innovation. Is it better or necessary to have done something internally first that you then go or offer externally? Or can you do things externally and also bring them back in internally? So I guess the question is it the chicken or is it the egg in terms of this as far as externally is concerned? And Caroline, let me ask that question of you first, but Caryn, I want to grab your thoughts on that too.
If I'm honest, I think it can be a mix of both. One thing that I'm really conscious of is doing things with clients that we're not doing internally, or me doing something that someone else in our firm can't talk to or doesn't understand. I never want that disconnect. But equally, there are some challenges that our clients are dealing with that maybe aren't something that our firm needs to address at this point or is not a priority for us. For example, as a team, we incorporate principles of agile and lean and design thinking, and parts of our firm have incorporated that for projects, but it's not like an enterprise level thing. We do have clients though who are a legal team who've been completely forgotten about in terms of a wider lean or agile project, and they don't understand the language that the rest of the business is working with. So we as a team actually can go in there and run some workshops for them and at least give them the language. So that's something that, you know, is something not rolled out enterprise level within our organization at the moment, but is something that I can still help with. Yeah. So for me, it's a bit of a both, but I am very conscious of that walking the talk as an organization, being able to understand how we're working with clients and there not being a disconnect beyond us doing our kind of consulting role.
And I guess it's kind of that the new and emergent definition around things like collaboration, isn't it? And a much more closer and integrated working relationship with clients. Caryn, what are your thoughts? Chicken or egg?
I think I would align with Carolyn on this one. I think it is a bit of both. Certainly, the feedback we regularly get from clients is this walk the talk, and also like almost like battle tested knowledge that you bring across, which I think is very true. I think there are also two elements to it, Terry. So I think, you know, when I reflect on my team, there is obviously the internal efficiency, but that is ultimately for the client gain. You know, my team works alongside our lawyers to deliver legal matters. You know, it's no longer just the lawyers delivering the legal matters. My team works alongside them, whether it be use of technology, change process, and the like. So they are certainly involved in the various matters that we deliver on. And then there obviously is certainly from our end, the consulting side of things, where you've got that ability to go into legal teams and actually look at the way in which they are sort of operating and look to transform those as well. And I think certainly the benefit from having done that internally is, number one, this is a relatively new area in legal as well. So there are very much developing skill sets in this area. And I think certainly one can impart that on clients. You know, it is not something that has been, that has grown over 15, 20 years. Obviously consulting has been around, but this real focus on legal is quite interesting. I also think, you know, understanding your client and understanding lawyers and the way in which they operate, the way in which they work, the pressures they are under and the like, is very important from an empathy point of view when you are trying to solve their problems. So I would say, do I think I would have liked to have done it the reverse way around? I'm not sure I would have, but certainly this is something that I think is, you know, the way in which we've done it from an internal to an external has been incredibly powerful.
Katrina, you know I'm coming to you now, right?
And
and you know, you've obviously had, you know, listened to these thoughts, and you are the client, really. I mean, in your capacity, you're purchasing and working with these folks all the time. And I'm wondering, you know, to what extent the sorts of things that Adrian and Caryn and Carolyn have been describing are really now being captured as an expectation as far as clients, and particularly sophisticated purchasers of legal services such as yourselves, in-house legal departments are expecting. So in your RFPs, etc. now, are you asking folks to demonstrate innovation and creativity and collaborative mindsets? How is all of that kind of sitting?
Thanks, Terri. So I don't think it's actually formalised, but I do absolutely in our team see an expectation from our team when we're talking to law firms to walk the talk and show us what they've seen work and not work, either internally or with other clients from an innovative perspective, and look to them for ideas and ways of working that might be new, that might challenge the status quo. I think there's a lot of examples that you can get from the terrific things that law firms have done either for themselves or for clients, but I also think what I've seen happen is that can probably get us sort of 75%, 80% of the way there. And then there always, I feel there still is that extra layer that the in-house team adds to that innovation process to really get to the pointy end of the problem. So I think a lot of the time when we're talking to lawyers, you know, the default position, they can sort of provide guidance up to a point, and then you need the company to make a risk-based decision, yes or no. That's very binary for the business, so that, you know, 5,000 employees can take it and run with it. That, you know, law firms are like, you know, that's not their function. The function of the in-house legal team is to add that extra layer on top. And so I really see that as us sort of complementing the base load that I guess that the law firms have done, and then coming in and making it super duper practical and hands-on.
But if someone couldn't answer that question, if you posed it and asked them to kind of demonstrate innovation, because the word I think that's been used or bandied about is that there's lots of innovation theatre. And everyone has the word innovation on their websites at the moment. If they can't actually demonstrate it, you know, is that something that you would then be a factor where you would have to look pretty hard at that organisation or that firm? Has it risen to that priority level of importance, or is it still kind of down the priority list, do you think?
I think it's certainly in the mix these days, and I think the bigger, more strategic projects, it's absolutely up there. Right. I think there's probably still a way to go in terms of some of the BAU work in challenging that dial a bit more.
So I'm going to stay with you, Katrina, for a second and go into one of our favourite topics. After mindset shift, this is the next one at the moment, which is, you know, data and data analytics. And we've mentioned it a few times. And so wanted to kind of address this question to you. How important in your business internally right now is data and data-driven decision-making? And I guess the other part of that, which is intricately linked, is how is it showing up in you being able to measure the success or good failure, because there is good failure, isn't there, of your innovation or transformation projects or initiatives?
Yeah, so I think data is definitely showing up more and more, and I think about the journey that the legal team at Origin's been on since I joined them about 7 years ago. We see data, and as I sort of mentioned in my introduction, we've got fantastic sort of up-to-date data now on things like our external spend. This year we were very quickly able to pivot to a new metric around AFAs, and I can kind of pull up a spreadsheet within sort of 3 or 4 minutes and tell you how we're tracking against the targets that we've set ourselves, which in and of itself was kind of revolutionary to be able to sort of pull that data together very promptly. But I'd also make the point that you know, data's not just numbers to me. So I think you can, as a legal team, set yourself data points that are around what does success look like, and you can describe that using words. It doesn't need to be numbers. And so the example that I have there is last financial year we ran a program around sort of knowledge-based working, and at the start of the financial year we spent some time describing what success would look like for a lawyer, and we got to the end of the year and sort of ticked it off against, you know, have we demonstrated success in those points for some of the team, most of the team, all of the team, and we were able to grade ourselves along those lines. So I absolutely think that data and data points are more and more important, and I think the best outcome for that is that it puts us in a great place alongside our other business colleagues in a corporate, because they all have scorecards. And I think for a long time, lawyers or the legal team often grappled with coming up with a scorecard of its own, absent just external spend. And so now I think we're in a great place that we have a scorecard that can talk to metrics, some of which are numbers based, sort of the quantitative, but some of which are qualitative, and having a program which backs it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Caryn, would you describe your, I'm going to call it your department or function within G&T, as a data-driven, tech-fueled business unit?
Yeah, so Terri, we are definitely getting there. I think when I reflect even on, I do monthly board reports, and if I reflect on the difference in the look and feel of that board report, it's significant. 4 years ago, 5 years ago or so, it would have been a lot of words, and now it's a lot of numbers. And I think that really reflects where we are. So what we always do, when we are putting a new initiative in place or implementing something, it's always about getting the baseline, making sure we've got a very good handle on time it's taken to do X or Y, where it obviously is measurable, and we capture all that data, and then we can sort of say, well, we've reduced the time to deliver this particular thing by 20%, 30%, these tools are used X amount of time. So we definitely have a very clear focus on data, and everything that we do surrounds data. So if I reflect again on, for example, where we prioritize our efforts, again, where did we start with our process mapping? We started with the top 10 matters or matter types that accounted for 50% or more of revenue. Now, the only way you can do that is if you have data. So we are definitely we align our efforts against it. It's not perfect. We are still on that journey, but data is becoming increasingly important in the way in which we identify those particular opportunities, and also the way in which we can actually measure the ROI, which obviously is very important from an innovation perspective.
Absolutely. I'm reluctantly now going to have to start wrapping up our conversation. You know that I could chat with you folks for like the rest of the day, and I'd be quite happy doing that. But we only, unfortunately, have a few minutes left. But I wanted to end by asking all of you this question, because as we look at the pandemic that we're still kind of in the middle of, and we look at our legal ecosystem, to some extent, great or small, we've had to adapt. We've had to innovate. There's been some innovation, there's been some transformation, but the burning question seems to still be whether we've laid a foundation for continuous improvement to move forward, or whether our industry is likely to reset as soon as the opportunity arises to the status quo. So just with a real quick, and I guess your top thought in relation to that, will the innovation that we're currently seeing, the transformation, if you like, be sustained, or will we reset to zero? And Adrian, I'm going to ask that question of you, and with the plea for it just to be your top thought as we close, please.
Yeah, well, my top thought is certainly this trend will continue. We are not going to reset. And I think we're not going to reset because prior to COVID, there was not a status quo. We were already making significant changes across this industry. Some would say it might have been slower than it could have been, but I've not spoken to a certainly a major firm or an in-house team that does not have this on the agenda.
Yeah.
And COVID's certainly forced a lot of change, but I don't think we're going to see a rubber band snap back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Carolyn, sustained or resetting to status quo?
Definitely sustained. This week we've released a report on the results and insights from an in-house survey that we just did. 64% of respondents said that they were continuing forward with their strategic priorities. So I took great comfort in that, given 78% of teams have had their work loads increased. Some have had budgets decreased, but there was 100% a very positive message through there around continuing. A lot of that was technology, but there was also investment in new skills, new roles, new resourcing models. So I look forward to seeing that all continue.
Absolutely. Katrina, sustained or reset?
Yeah, definitely sustained. Okay. I would say I've spent the last couple of years trying to get business cases up for some of my projects. COVID hit and they all got delivered within the space of about a month. So I think it helped me get a lot of runs on the board in terms of people overnight seeing the value of what we're trying to do, and I think it's brought us a lot of good credentials moving forward now. So when I go now with a business case, I think there's a lot of good experience, and people can see the value that we're adding. So it's certainly pushed that agenda forward for us.
Terrific. And Caryn, the last word is yours. Sustained or resetting to status quo?
So I'm going to go full circle over here, Terry, and go back to the way in which we defined innovation. I think the areas that are adding value will sustain 100%. I don't think we will regress in that. But if there are ways in which people are working at the moment, which means that they actually feel it is not as beneficial as what it was before, I think those are the areas that will go. And I've certainly seen that across the board with the way in which lawyers operate. If something works for them and it provides value, they will stick with it.
Yeah, fantastic. Folks, thank you so much for your time and your generosity and the experience sharing that you've provided everyone today. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. If you're enjoying these webinars and also the podcasts that come from them, please do be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter to learn more about when these sessions will be available to you, but also other sessions that we have coming up. And again, in closing, thank you very much, Caryn, Adrian, Katrina, Carolyn. Really, really appreciated your time and just a delight to spend the hour with you. So everyone, until next time, see ya. Bye.
Thank you, Terry. Bye all.